All right, this is Stan Schofield, and this presentation is on the Youth Parisi Speed School Evaluation and Sales Process. Here we go. So the purpose behind the evaluation. It's unethical to prescribe a training program without knowing anything about the client, right? Like you would not go to the doctor and be like, hey, my elbow hurts, and expect the doctor to be like, oh, okay, here's a prescription, have a great day. No, you'd expect him to go through a process of learning a little bit about you. How did the injury happen? When did it happen? Maybe he'd palpate the area, do some special tests, do an x-ray, and then based upon all of that information, then make a prescription about what the best way is to take care of your injury. We do the same thing, all right? It's going to provide us an assessment of the athlete's current ability level. It also allows for a proper exercise prescription to be developed because we know something about them. It gives you, the coach, information about the athlete to present and explain to the parent. It also gives the coach the opportunity to sell the appropriate program to the parent and to the athlete. You know, and it gives the coach the opportunity to make an athlete a client for life. This is their first time with us, and their experience throughout this process can really shape their future with us. You know, and it also allows us to establish a rapport with the parent. So keep in mind what's unique about sports performance is the fact that the parent is the client. They're the person purchasing it, but the athlete is the person that's actually experiencing it, right? So there's a distinct difference between the two. So you do a lot of upfront work with the parent in the beginning, and then on the back end, from the user side, the athlete is the one that's going to utilize our services. So the setup. All right, so the setup involves, you got to make sure that you have the 3 ball timing gates, the Vertec. You need to have a measuring tape of at least 50 feet set up on the turf area. You need 3 disc cones and a stopwatch set up for the 5-10-5. You need a chin-up bar, you know, and a box if necessary for somebody that can't reach the bar easily. You need the clipboard with the scoring system on the back. And you also need the new eval packet, right, which has the intake form, the release and waiver, the credit card authorization, the youth evaluation form and running analysis. It'll also have the scorecard that you're going to give the athlete, the laminated youth program packages, as well as the sales form. Those are all the things you're going to need prior to the athlete kind of coming in. And you want to have this stuff prepared so you look professional and you're not scrambling to grab these things while the customer's waiting out front. Have everything set up, ready to go prior to the evaluation, because that's professionalism. All right, so the athlete and the parents show up. The first thing you're going to want to do is do a brief introduction of yourself and welcome to the center. Make sure you shake the parent's hand, maybe give a fist pump or whatever you want to do for a greeting to the athlete, you know, and introduce yourself. You know, hey, my name's Stan Schofield and I'm a performance coach at Schofield Sports Performance. I'll be performing your evaluation today. This evaluation is going to be one of the most important days you can be involved in our program. Today, we're going to gain valuable information about your performance that will help us select the best program and how we can improve you as an athlete. We're going to go through a number of different tests. These tests are going to examine your running speed, your form, your vertical power, horizontal power, change of direction, and relative body strength, all of which influence your athletic performance. Once we're done, we're going to go over your results and come up with a plan on how we can improve your performance, right? So once you do that introduction, now you're going to walk them through the facility so they get an idea of the layout, the facility, and get a feel for our culture. Bonus if you introduce them to a couple athletes and coaches along the way. Show them, hey, here's how you're going to enter, where the cubby area is to put their belongings, where the bathrooms are, you know, as well as changing, as well as the locker rooms, our retail store, and then an explanation of the track, the turf, and the weight room and how we utilize them all, and bring them through each and every area so they understand what each one is used for. So now that you've completed that, next we're going to move into the intake. So you want to make sure that the parent gets handed the folder that has all the pertinent data that we need. right? So we're going to make sure that the evaluation sheet has the athlete's name, date, age, grade, school, town, sports, and goals. Hand the parent our intake form, the release of waiver, and credit card authorization form, and ask them to fill out everything front to back. And we're going to collect that information at the end of the evaluation. You can just tell the parents, hey, we simply have you fill out the credit card form because it helps us move through the registration process at the end. If they decide not to sign up with us, that's fine. We're going to shred that information. At this point, then you're going to ask the parents, hey, to have a seat up at the counter to fill out those forms, and then you're going to take the athlete out onto the turf. All right, so now you're going to bring that athlete through a modified version of our warm-up. All right, the warm-up should be about 10 to 15 minutes in length, depending on how much time you have. All right, it should be explanatory, but don't go into too much detail. So don't give them all the detail on how to properly perform a jumping jack or properly perform a squat, because part of it, you're assessing them and seeing how they're doing. It doesn't need to be perfect. The evaluation is also used to see how the athlete follows commands and their overall motor skills. So if you do give them a couple coaching cues, like, hey, make sure you keep your hands open, or on the squat, let's make sure those knees go out, let's see how they respond to that. So you get an idea of how easy they're going to be able to coach. Typically like 5 to 6 reps of each exercise. Make sure you use the athlete's name throughout the warm-up. At the very beginning, prior to the warm-up, make sure you instruct them on the 5 principal points of our success. One of the key things is place emphasis on proper arm action, as you'll use this as part of your sales process to close them out. Instruct them, hey, make sure your hand goes in front of the nose, backhand goes past the pockets. Hands are open, not closed. Arms at 90-90. These are easy instructions for them to follow and easy things for them to remember, and you're going to use that to your advantage at the end. Just tell them, like, hey, now we're going to go through our warm-up, and this is our cornerstone of our program, something you can do each and every session while you're here. It's going to be different from anything you may have done in the past, but it's going to be an advantage for you. You're going to leave here a better athlete than you came in. Next, we're going to begin the testing process. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to bring them into the track. And you're going to ask them to perform like 2 sprints of 30 yards. And we're going to use this as a way to kind of assess their form. Perform one of them, have them do one of them so you're standing in the front of them so you can get a visual of what they look like from the interior. And then also to have them do another one where you can look at them from a lateral view. Right? And you want to find out what the technical problems are that the athlete needs to work on, and that's going to be on the back of the evaluation form, right? And you can make check marks of the things that they need to, where their faults are. And you can then give parents a scientific explanation as to what you're observing. Don't give the athlete any feedback. Don't instruct the athlete. Observe naturally how they're doing it. It also serves as a warm-up prior to them sprinting full speed. So tell them, hey, I want you to run from here to the 30-yard line, all right? And you're going to kind of do a build-up sprint. So that means you're going to start at like 60%, build into 70%, once you reach the 10-yard line, and maybe 80% from the 20 all the way to the end of the 30, all right? And then have them walk back. So the 10, the 20, the 40-yard dash, all right, your first test. The 10, the 20, and the 40-yard dash are used to test acceleration and their transition into maximum speed. All right, the athlete gets 2 attempts. They're going to sprint in lane 1, which is the red lane, and then walk back in the yellow lane, which is lane 3. The athletes are going to start from a 3-point stance, and you can provide them instructions if needed. All right. The big thing here when they go is make sure that other people, if they're on the track or around it, they're aware that an athlete is testing and they don't interfere with their test runs, right? We don't want that kid to come hard charging down and clean out somebody, all right? So when they're about to go, you're going to yell, coming down, all right? prior to the athlete taking off. Remember, acceleration is strength-based. Maximum speed is more neural and endurance-based. All right? The 10-yard dash is a measure of their acceleration. How quickly can they reach maximum speed? It's a measure of quickness and explosive power. 20-yard dash is a measure of, how well the acceleration begins to turn into top speed. And the 40 really tells us, the 20 to 40 tells us, their full sprinting speed or the athlete's top speed and running mechanics, right? And we break each one of those up. So you're going to make sure that you write down on the scorecard, right, in the evaluation sheet, what the athlete did, what their splits were for the 10, the 20, and the 40-yard dash. Once they complete it, hey, whether they did good or bad, give them a little high five. Great job. How'd you feel? All right, let's move on to the next test. Next test, vertical jump. The vertical jump is a measure of an athlete's overall explosiveness. It gives insight to the athlete's overall lower body power and core strength, as well as how well an athlete can load and land from a jump. They give them 3 attempts, and the best score is recorded. All right. Make sure you're very strict about the standards in which we set up and test for the vertical jump, and that's covered in the video series for all of our performance testing. The 5-hop broad jump is next. It's a measure of horizontal power, how great are you at putting force behind you, and their ability to kind of repeat that power, as well as how well can they absorb and create and absorb power. It's strongly correlated to acceleration. Big thing, make sure the toes are behind the line to start, record the total distance covered from the heel, and they only get 1 attempt. So they're going to do it 5 times in a row, but they'll only get 1 run through the entire test. Right? Next, we're going to move into the chin-up. And the chin-up is a measure of the athlete's relative body strength, or how strong are they for their body weight, right? The best athletes are always round to round, pound for pound, the strongest for their body weight. Sprinters, running backs, gymnasts, wrestlers, all people that have high levels of relative strength, right? It's a measure of the number of consecutive chin-ups they can perform. The elbows have to start straight and finish straight. They can't start or finish, or do half reps with bent arms. The chin has to go over the bar. No swinging or kicking your body or kipping is allowed. That is the standard, and you have to adhere for it, because when this kid goes and tests again down the line, if you gave them a whole bunch of wiggle room or counted half reps and they don't get as many reps, that doesn't look well for us, and the athlete goes home disappointed in their progress and doesn't bode well for our program. So make sure you're strict with this, as we are strict throughout the entire training process and reevaluation process down the road. Five, 10, 5. All right, this is our final test. It's a measure of an athlete's ability to change direction, their ability to accelerate, decelerate, and then reaccelerate while managing their center of gravity. Big thing, athlete must touch the cones or the time does not count. They get 2 attempts. I usually go in the same direction. Make sure you're using a stopwatch, or if the ball timers are available, you can use those as well, right? All right, so now all the testing's complete. We got all our data. So now what you're going to do is you're going to give them a big high five, congratulate the athlete, a job well done, great work. Hey, once you go over and join your parents, I got to go add up all your scores, and I'll come grab you guys in a couple of minutes, all right? You're then going to go add up their scores using the Youth Evaluation Scoring GPT. If that's not working, there's always the backup of using the standard boards on the back of the clipboard. You can use that as well. So you want to fill out the scorecard as well as the evaluation sheet. If you're using the GPT, make sure you print off the complete summary that you can go over with the parent and give to them at the end. Make sure also when you're doing this that you are ranking them based upon their age, whether they're average, below average, excellent for each individual test. So now we're moving into the parent conference and the sales, right? And the classic example, like Chinese proverb, if you can't smile, you can't sell anything, right? There's 5 main parts to the sale. You got the greeting, the presentation, the close, possible negotiation, and then the goodbye are the steps that in the process you're going to follow. Now, coming to the sales process. So now you're going to go out and present the evaluation results to the parent and the athlete. You know, use both of their names. You know, you're going to, and you can get that from the intake form. You know, Mrs. Walker, Johnny did a great job during the evaluation. We're going to go over the results and then to select the best program option for Johnny to be involved in. So how's that sound? So as you're presenting the material, you know, smile as you present the information, and you know, as well as the summary of each and how they were performed, right? Use a variety of visual, auditory, and kinesthetic communication, right? So you're going to make sure some people learn by looking at you. Some people are going to learn better by listening to what you have to say. Some people are going to learn better by them actually doing it. Be positive. Even if the kid didn't do well, you still want to remain positive. You know, if they bombed all the tests, be like, hey, we knew that coming into it that you need to improve. This just gives us a better idea of where you're starting from, right? So be positive, because the kid may not feel good because he knows he wasn't a good athlete, but that's the whole reason they came here. So remind them of that. You know, the most important part as you start this is begin by asking the athlete, hey, what'd you think of the evaluation process? All right, dude, what was your favorite test? Oh, that's you. You know, the sprinting is usually the favorite. You know, but ask them that. Ask them why. Right. Then the most important part, what did you learn? You know, this is where the arm action comes in, and they'll probably repeat something like that. And if they don't, you can ask them leading questions like, when I sprint, do I want my hands open or closed? Where does the lead hand go? Where's the backhand go? What position do I want my elbow in? Ask them those questions. They should be able to nail that if you did a great job in explaining the principal points of success and going over that during the warm-up, right? Dude, if you nail that right there, man, your chances of getting the sale go way, way up. As you begin to kind of review each test, you know, you're going to review the performance compared to their peers using the athlete norms guide on the back of the clipboard or in a GPT summary. Review each test. All right, the first test is the 10-yard dash. That's a measure of your ability to reach maximum speed in the shortest time distance possible. You did it in 2.2. That rates you as average amongst your peers. You know, here how we're going to improve that, we're going to work on your explosive power, right? Or we're going to work on your technique, whatever you feel it is they need to work on, but give them an idea of how they can fix it to get better, all right? And you're going to go over that for each and every test, right? And once you complete that, you can ask them, hey, you have any questions? And then you're going to begin leading into the close, right? Okay, so here's our next steps. So the sale, the close, you know, the potential negotiation, like this is the most important part of the evaluation. And this is the point where a lot of coaches, they get really nervous. But here's the way you've got to think about it. You're not doing a sale. Remember, people are coming here because we are experts in what we do. And you're an expert, right? They're asking you for your recommendation. So that's all you're doing, is you're making a recommendation based upon you as the professional. And here at Schofield Performance, we never ask you to say or do anything that you wouldn't necessarily believe yourself. Like, it makes perfect sense to make a recommendation to come in here 3 times a week, because you yourself wouldn't work out once or twice a week and expect to see massive changes, right? If you were working with somebody, right, you would expect them to say, hey, you need to be in here at least 3 days a week, right? 2 times a week if you're in season. So the recommendations you're making in this closing process is really just a prescription and recommendations that you, the coach, believe in. All right? You're not selling. So begin by reviewing the different class types and their focus, right? So the different class types, we have acceleration, top speed, change of direction, strength. Acceleration, we're working on improving the first 10 yards or first step quickness. Give them examples of the different classes, right? And then now begin kind of leading them down the funnel. So to train, how many times per week were you thinking about training? Our recommendation is at least 3 times a week for skill-related sports. And give them an example with their own sport. If they're a basketball player, if you only practice basketball once or twice a week, do you think you'd make huge improvements at basketball? Speed training is the same thing. It's a skill. You need to work on it. And the athletes who get the best results are in here at least 3 times a week. Have you seen the different programs we offer? Let me review them with you. The unlimited program is our most popular program. Which of these programs would you like to move forward with? So again, if they're like, hey, 2 times a week, okay, is there a chance you can move 3? Like 3 is a massive difference. 2 times a week is typically what we'd recommend for athletes that are in season, right? So usually you can convince them, hey, this unlimited membership makes more sense because you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. If people have really strong competing schedules, you understand, but our recommendation is 3, right? Once you kind of review the different programs and the different options and they decided on it, all right, son, are you ready to get started? Because that will help. You want the kid to kind of help you sell their parents into purchasing the membership for them, all right? The other big thing is people you may get asked is about discounts, or they want to negotiate on price. The simple answer is, sorry, we don't do discounts. And that's it. Like, just leave it at that, right? If they decide to argue and want to get it, like, listen, we don't think it's ethical to do that, right? If I give you a discount, but that person over there is paying full price, right? But you're both doing the same program, how is that fair to them to not give them a discount too? And then the next thing you know, if you're giving a discount to everybody, well, is it really a discount, right? So we don't do discounts. The price is the price, right? Again, you don't argue with your physician or a lawyer about like getting a discount from them. How are you any different? So closing. So we also recommend a minimum of 3 months to see changes you're looking for. Just coming into for a month, that's like just saying, hey, I'm just going to practice basketball for a month and I want to play, I want to be on the varsity team or I want to make this travel team. Like, no, skill takes time to develop. So we want at least 3 months in here, right? After reviewing and selecting the memberships, then review how the memberships work. Hey, they're auto renewing, right? So each month this is going to renew, after every 4 weeks, right? We also have a 12-week option. Explain how that works. It's 12 weeks in length. You're going to pay every 4 weeks. So that's the other option. We do have a private training option. If somebody's interested in private training, then just say, hey, we do have private training options. They're twice a week, and I can get you more information about that. And if that's the case, you can talk to the CSM or refer to the sales binder. Next, you're going to review the terms of purchase. All these items are found inside the membership folder, right? Review the terms of purchase with them, about scheduling, how to schedule, when to schedule, if they need to cancel the class, how long they have, which is 4 hours, up to 4 hours prior to the start of class. They have up to an hour prior to the class starting to sign up. If they need to place holds or cancel or change their membership, how do they do that? And those are simple Google forms that they fill out, and the QR codes are up front inside the facility. And who to contact for problems. And that's going to be our CSM, or email us at info@schofieldperformance.com, and a member of our team will get back to you within 24 hours. So now we get into the goodbye. Now we're closing up. They've decided to sign up. They know what they're going to do, right? And now we're just presenting them with the final materials till they leave. So we're going to review the schedule, the days of the week and the hours that we hold the classes. We're going to review where to find the calendar of the classes with them. We're going to review wellness living and how they can schedule. Make sure they see that sheet and how to download the app and schedule themselves. You're going to hand the client the youth folder to take home and make sure the athlete gets their scorecard. Then, hey, thanks for coming in. It was great working with you today. I hope you had a blast. And remember, hey, where does our hand go, when we're sprinting? Let them tell you, hey, lead hand goes in front of the nose, the chin. Hey, dude, you just left here faster than you came in. How about that? Right? So again, thank them for coming in and, look forward to seeing them again in the near future. So then wrapping everything up, you're going to complete the new youth client purchase processing form, selecting, what they're going to be purchasing. You're going to turn that form into the CSM, as well as the evaluation materials, evaluation forms. If the client didn't purchase, right, tell the client, hey, it's fine to go home and think about it, right? But you need to know, hey, can you give us an answer within the next 48 hours, right, about what you want to do? Hey, why not now? Oh, well, I need to talk to Johnny about, is what we want to do. Well, is that something that you can do now over there? Or if it's, we got to wait a couple weeks till basketball's over. Hey, that's great. We can still get you signed up now and run your card, but we'll have the start date on that particular date. If it's, hey, I got this in the future, get them to sign up now and get that out of the way. Now you've closed them out, right? It's a simple process. They may not be thinking about that, right? But don't be too pushy, right? But just be prepared to follow up. Again, it's much easier to get them signed up while they're there in front of you than to have to call them and email them and follow up and get them to sign up, right? That's more work on your end versus, hey, man, they're right in front of you. Close them out, and just keep in mind, if they don't purchase that time, you got 7 days to get them to close and get them to sign up in order to gain the sales commission. After those 7 days, because the CSM is going to let you keep their contact info. After that, give the paperwork back to the CSM so that they can hold on to it so that we can kind of work through our long-term lead nurture to try to get them to kind of come back and sign up. So that's the sales process right there. So your next steps from here, once you understand all this material, is to begin shadowing with one of the coaches or the training director about how to perform this, as well as walking through the training director about, hey, doing a mock evaluation with them prior to doing this live. All right. Thank you very much.